here's the thing: is if in aviation, if you have the right metal at the wrong price, I don't care how good your business model is, you're gonna fail. People just think metal and mission. No, it's the right metal at the right price for the right mission.
This is the Time on Wing podcast. Welcome back. I'm Courtney Miller with Visual Approach Analytics. With me, as always, Garrick Deschavon of Collateral Verifications. Garrick, who are we talking to today?
Today we are talking to Ryan Goepel, I believe is the pronunciation of his last name. But so Ryan is currently president of Global Crossing Airlines. Prior to that, he was EVP and CFO for Global Crossing Airlines as well. He was CFO at Flair Airlines. He was also CFO at Viking Exploration Corporation. The CFO, he's been CFO at a lot of things, but CFO of CNC Reservoirs, VP and CFO of Zytex. He was the business unit controller for KBR and managing director at Quiznos. He was also senior business development manager at Neighbors International. He had a job director of global finance for Burger King Corporation, and was also strategic marketing manager, investor relations for Halliburton. And I think he started his career as Imperial Service Advisor for CIBC. He's got a BA in political science from the University of British Columbia and an MBA from Texas A&M, and he's also a certified management accountant. So he's done quite a bit of stuff, which a lot of it is outside of aviation, which is kind of cool to kind of figure out what got him into airlines, the airline world. But so it's going to be nice to chat with him and get his thoughts on what's going on. So Ryan, this is your Time on Wing. So before we get on with our guest, which you guys are going to absolutely love, we obviously, first of all, we want to thank all our listeners for listening to us and making the show what it is today. And we certainly welcome any of you to, whenever you see us at conferences, just please say hello. And we'd love to hear that you guys are listening and fans of the show. As you all know, we do run businesses. And so from my end at Collateral Verifications, on the appraisal side, right, obviously, if you have any needs when it comes to aircraft, engine, landing gear, you name it, right? Just please feel free to reach out. I'm very approachable. I'm happy to chat about any kind of projects, and we'd love to work with you on a variety of things. We do have some publications out there as well. I do the Turbine Aircraft Guide, Turboprop Value Guide. I've got the Aircraft Rating Tool. So there's various publications that we put together that can kind of help you on your day-to-day. Great reference points. So definitely, kind of reach out to us, and we'd love to chat and kind of start that relationship with you.
Okay. Back to the show.
Ryan, thank you very much for being on the show with us today. We certainly appreciate your time. And as we do with all of our other guests, we'd love to hear kind of how you got, into aviation. I think your background is interesting because you've definitely done a lot of things outside of aviation.
Yeah.
And then you got into the airline side. So we'd love to hear how you got to where you are today and, what the passion was behind aviation, if there was one or not, right? That's always interesting to hear. So I'll let you take it away.
Yeah. So I guess from my perspective, how I got into aviation is an interesting story. I started, I'm originally from Vancouver, grew up in Vancouver, Canada, went to school there. Out of school, I went and started working in banks. I was a classic finance person, went to grad school in Texas A&M, and got a job at Halliburton right out of grad school, working in they kind of rotate you different departments. I was in investor relations. I worked in Russia. Believe it or not, lived there for a couple of years, which was interesting. Got to do a lot of different kind of experiences. So basically it was oil and gas. It's kind of oil field services, oil and gas, construction, that kind of work. Fast forward to like 2017, I was working with a private equity group that had made an investment in Flair in Canada. And they found out I was a Canadian, which apparently was a qualification. And they needed they said they needed a Canadian and a CFO. And they asked me how much if I liked aviation. And I said, well, what do I know about aviation? I go, well, I like to fly. I travel a lot, was basically my answer. And he said, great, you're now the CFO of Flair.
But you're Canadian, yes.
But you're Canadian. That was that was ultimately the qualification. We've made this investment. We want to understand what's going on. Can you go up there and step in as CFO and see what's going on? And I thought it was like a month or two consulting project. I call it kind of my Gilligan's Island job because it kind of went from like 2 to 3 weeks to like 2 years, where I was commuting from Miami to Edmonton, where they had relocated. And that's really kind of where I really got to learn the business, but I had always been fascinated in aviation ever since I was a little kid. I had the models, I was one of those kids who built models and hung them for in my room.
We don't do that, do we, Garrett?
No, not at all. Not my background at all.
Not at all.
Yeah,
exactly,
no,
just don't look in the back.
don't look behind me.
Nothing going on here.
Yeah, I'd always go to the air shows. I live next to the airport, so I'd actually be one of those guys who go to the airport. There's a viewing area to watch planes land. So I was always fascinated with flying and aviation. And so when I kind of got to Flair, it was great. There was a guy named Bill Hardy, who was a chief operating officer, who had been in aviation for 40 plus years. He'd been a 747 pilot. And it was great for me because I just kind of got to sit in his office and not only hear stories, but just sort of hear how the business runs. I feel like I got like a master's in aviation from him, just in just listening to. He had a lot of idioms. He had a lot of sayings. He was a very funny guy, but he really taught me kind of how to run an airline. Is really what was great. And I call aviation the Hotel California of industries, because once you get in it, you can never get out.
Yeah.
Nor do you want to, right? Like
Welcome.
It's and that's kind of how I got into it. And that being said, I saw a lot of parallels to like oilfield services. Like oilfield services, it's a 24-hour business. If you're using heavy equipment, and if you don't use it all the time, you lose money. And if you screw up, people die, right? So safety culture, utilization, a 24/7, internationally relevant business is kind of similar in that way. So I think I saw a lot of parallels there, and I was hooked pretty quick.
And this was 2017, you said,
Yep.
with Flair?
Yeah. So they had just 777 had made an investment in them, the private equity group, with the business plan to go from a charter to LCC in Canada. So I spent my whole time talking to investors about how bad charter was and how great LCC was. Ironically, I ended up back into charter. But I also learned a lot about charter from that, and I understood the differences between the two models.
So how long did that 3-month consulting gig last?
Almost 2 years, year and a half, 18 months to 2 years. Yeah. And commuting from Miami to Edmonton, I don't recommend. That's a hike. And so when the opportunity at Global kind of came about, it just made a lot of sense.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I couldn't imagine. I mean, the connection between Edmonton and Miami is not necessarily a highly trafficked one.
It's a zero trafficked one, actually.
It was one for like 18 months. It's weird. This weird Pete shows up.
Yeah, that was Flair, and it wasn't me.
Yeah.
I didn't put it in there, but Flair did it for a very brief period of time, and it was part of my learnings. Is they launched that route without really. They just kind of, I called it the Field of Dreams model. They sort of, you build it and hope they come, and I think that happens a lot in aviation, and it's an expensive way to grow.
It's not necessarily wrong or a mistake either. I mean, there are some airlines who've been very successful doing it. I think you just have to be willing to pull it out. It's expensive to do, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so you joined. It was Global Crossing at the time.
Yeah, Global. It's always been Global Crossing. We call it Global X.
Got it.
I was the first hire, or one of the very first.
Employee number one.
Yeah. So it was February 14th, 5 a.m. Got an email from the then founder and said, "Hey, I need a CFO. We've kind of cut this deal with Canada Jetlines. We're going to do like a reverse merger. We're going to take it public. I need a CFO. Are you available?" I was, and at 11, I was the CFO of Global. So it was a really in-depth interview process.
Of 2019?
Here's your desk. Here's your 2019. So it was 2020. So
good timing.
February 2020. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's great timing.
So I had I got a desk next door. Here's a big pile. Let's go figure out what we got to do to kind of start this. And that was it. That was the very beginning.
Wow. Yeah. So how did you guys start in terms of, did you just have, kind of a handful of planes, or to kind of get started with what you were doing, or what? I'd be curious to, since you were at the beginning, I'd love to hear how that got started, right?
We had a PowerPoint, and
that was
it,
baby.
That's it. It was a PowerPoint and an idea. Our founder had launched a bunch of, he had done this a couple times, and he had assembled a team of who'd gone through certification. We saw like a market opportunity for what we were trying to do. And then COVID hit, which ironically was probably one of the best things for us. We kind of jokingly said we were the most profitable airline at the time because we weren't flying and we had no planes. And so we were just a couple people in an office trying to write manuals and go through the certification process and figure out how to do this. And because of that, the amount of capital we required to get started was probably a fraction of what it would take to do today. It's probably an absolute fraction of what it would take today. Simply because there were planes available, there were people available, never waste a crisis. You could kind of get like power by the hour and certain terms and conditions that really, really, helped us at the beginning because we started this with no money. We've always operated this with kind of very limited funding. And, so far we're still here as we joke.
So you started, you always operated the 320s, right, from the start, CFM powered?
No, so we've Airbus family of aircraft. So our second aircraft was a 321. Our first one was a 320. We're engine agnostic, and simply because the reason being we were never going to get to a point of scale in our first X years that it would make a difference. We weren't doing the engine work, so we would basically take whatever the best deal we could get, and we didn't want to limit ourselves by the engine type.
Okay, so I find that fascinating. We'll definitely talk about that. But really interested in the early days. So you secured the aircraft. I actually don't know this, but I assume they're all leased. Is that?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. We purchased our first aircraft 2 months ago. We converted from a lease to an acquisition, but up until then, it was 100% leased.
Very cool. And okay, so the original business model was I guess ACMI for jetlines?
No, jetlines had nothing to do with it.
Interesting.
Ironically. So jetlines was simply a vehicle to get public. So when we merged with jetlines, effectively at the point, jetlines had done all this work to launch an airline and never ever even filed the manuals. They never even got to filing the manuals. So by the time we kind of had negotiated a deal with them, they were done. They were done. They weren't going to happen. So we basically used that ticker and that investment group, raised, I think it was $1 million to relist. And we started this with $1 million, and that's it. We kind of lived off that for a while, believe it or not. And the jetlines thing, we just kind of parked. Eventually, what we did is we spun jetlines out, and we actually launched jetlines as a side hustle almost later. But that was completely independent and not part of the original idea.
And then, so the aircraft that were, I guess, did you do just traditional charter in there as well? So when we started, we got certified August of 2021. So from my starting in February through August, it was manual revisions, it was proving runs, it was hiring, training, and all that kind of stuff. We started first week of August, and I think our first kind of missions we were doing was just straight up charter, ACMI charter. But probably an untold part of our story that's interesting is if you remember, in the middle of August of 21, there was a little thing going on in Afghanistan. And we got a call and said, can you help with what's going on there? Our 321 wasn't on our certification yet. We still had our 320. We got a waiver from the U.S. government to go to Afghanistan to help evacuate people who needed to get out. So we were actually the only U.S. carrier and the only airline to actually go into Kabul. So a lot of people talked about what they did in Afghanistan, but they were picking people up in the Middle East and flying them back. We actually went into Kabul, and we did about 10 flights, rescue flights, of various people who the U.S. government needed to get out. And so, and the rescue flights were to, I guess, some
a small stand nearby that then they got
sure.
evacuated out of there. So we did shuttle flights in and out.
Oh, wow.
But it was all volunteers. We were really proud. We had been an airline for a week, and all of a sudden we deployed our entire fleet, our entire crew, to the middle of, a war zone, and saved a lot of lives. I think we got about 2,000 people out.
Wow.
Over 3 or 4 days, and that's how we started. And it was kind of, yeah.
Was there a point? Why did that end? I mean, I know why the need for that ended, but did it just become too dangerous?
So the last flight we were going to do was the day the gates blew up. Remember they blew up the gates?
Yeah, I remember that.
We were in the air and about to land, and we got diverted, and we never went back.
And that was it.
That was it. They said no civilian aircraft are allowed back in. That was it.
That makes sense.
No, that's crazy. That's crazy.
So we would fly. Kudos to our crews. They were flying, no lights, no radar at night. You land, engines running, people run into the plane, get on the plane, take off, and go. And that was our first week.
What kind of training from a crew standpoint does that take?
Well, you don't really. I think we benefited.
You don't train, you just do it.
We benefit from. We had a lot of guys who it was both men and women, who had worked in the region before, had flown to that airport before.
Okay.
Several were ex-military, so they've done this kind of flying before. So it was all volunteer, and we had countless people who said, "I want to go help." So that's a part of our story that hasn't really talk. That's part of our thing. We don't really talk about our customers. We really talk about the things we've done. But we've done some pretty cool things.
And this was one of your first
week.
What else were you doing at that time? Were you doing other business?
No, all our planes were there. We only had 2 planes.
So that was it.
So we sent our whole fleet there. So that first 2 weeks, that it was like a good 10, 15 days. That's what we did.
Wow.
And then we came back, and then we kind of got into the traditional, out of Miami, there's a lot of stuff to Cuba, and there's Central America, the Caribbean islands, sports charters. And that's kind of how we started with 1 aircraft, with 2 then at that point, and then just started to add. The analogy I use is I talk about a hedgehog strategy, about how we think about simplifying our business, but really we think of each aircraft as a restaurant, almost as a store. And maybe that's because I worked at Burger King and that's part of my franchise model. But how do you get the maximum utilization per aircraft, right? And so, but when that aircraft's full and fully utilized, you get another. And it's like opening another restaurant. The restaurant gets busy, you open another one nearby or around the corner. And that's how we've kind of grown, by kind of growing with our own cash.
And, okay, so in fall of 21, you have the 2 aircraft.
Yep.
Today, you're pushing, 20? Is that right? 18.
Yeah, we have 18 today. And about another 5 coming.
Take me from 2 to 18.
So they kind of came in chunks of 2, and it was just kind of when we can get aircraft available. We kind of got up to, we grew really, really fast the first 3 years. And then I think in the last 12 months, we've kind of been in this 18 to 20 aircraft range, or 16 to 18 range, because we needed to, what you'll find in growing a business like this, especially with as flexible as we have to be, right? Like, since in a given year, we've flown to 66 countries and 350 airports, right? So that's a lot. And we operate 24 hours a day. So when you get up to that kind of scale, it's not linear. It's a step change, right? Like, you get to the first 6, you're kind of like, okay, you can have, 6 dispatchers, but when you get to like 10, now you need 18, right? And so it's a step change. And so we really needed to, in the last 12 months, grow into what we were and set ourselves up for the next step change, which is the next 5 to 10 we're bringing on. So I don't know the exact dates they came on board. I'd have to go back through it's all kind of a blur.
These were all incremental, kind of cash funded. I mean,
yeah.
It's almost kind of a cash business, right? When there's business, you get the airplane.
And that's probably, a lot of people will question, why are you public, right? Because companies like us are never public. And I joke, I have the downsides of being public, so I have to tell everybody everything and file everything. But it does give us a certain cash discipline when it comes to stuff. But we don't have a lot of the upsides because we're on a small exchange and no one really knows how to value us because we're not a scheduled carrier, we're a charter. And how do you do that kind of math? And really, when you think about how we've got, so we're at 18 aircraft, we've got 800 people. I think we've done 100 plus, $120 million in the first 6 months of this year as we published. We've kind of gotten the stage over 4 years with about 20 million of equity and 30 million of debt, which is like 50 million. And you look at some of the other airlines that have started.
Let me check the math. It checks out. You're good.
Yeah. If you look at some of the others if you go to start, and this is why we start as charter, right? Because capital needs are lower. You look at some of the scheduled guys who've gone to start, I'm willing to bet they've probably put in a lot more than 50 to get to this scale. And that's why we started this way. Because charter just requires less capital.
Yeah. So, like from the schedule side, you have to prove the 90-day zero cash.
You still have to do that stuff. That stuff you still have to do, but you don't have to fly. Every flight we fly makes money.
Sure.
We don't ever fly a flight and burn fuel because we've got a schedule we got to commit to, right? So our model is completely de-risked, or not completely, it's significantly de-risked, right? We don't have fuel risk. We don't take ticket sale risk. We don't take schedule risk. We take utilization risk. Do we fly our aircraft enough at the right price? Which is a very different risk profile, which requires significantly less capital, less scale, which is why that's why we launched this way. That was the whole concept.
I mean, sounds. I'm from the regional world, right? Which is long-term ACMI. I don't think people realize that, right? These are 8 to 12 year ACMI agreements,
right?
Which is cost plus. You're more traditional on the ACMI with, I guess, charter to ACMI. Is that a way to think about it?
So we are cost, and that's when you talk about the analogies I had to my previous life. Like when I was at KBR, we had a construction, and we had two kinds of construction projects. You have your cost plus projects, which are basically labor, and then you had your fixed price construction projects, right, where you took all the risk. Scheduled carrier is a fixed price business, right? Because once you publish your schedule, 97% of your, that's a number I've made up, but a big percentage of your costs are fixed, right?
Right.
And that's all about managing your fixed cost. But on the charter side, you're a cost plus. Now, we do ACMI and charter. Now, ACMI is better because you get better utilization, but you get a lower rate. Because you almost can go block out 6 months, 12 months, maybe a year, and know what that plane's doing, and that's great. Whereas charter's one-off. And charter requires a lot more coordination. Charter is more like private jets, right? Like that's the private jet space where you provide a turnkey solution for a customer who doesn't have the infrastructure to provide ground handling and fuel and airports and permits and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of goes into when we go to explain our results. Like a charter hour is almost 3 times the revenue of an ACMI hour, but it's significantly less margin because you have all these other flow. I don't get 30% margin on fuel. You just can't do it. Love to. But it's been kind of a mix of our business, and as our business has evolved, we've definitely gone more into the ACMI just because it gets us better utilization, and we use the charter to fill in the gaps.
Is getting into the minutia here, and the fuel cost on charter. Do you take? Is it more fixed cost for you, or are you offering fuel as a pass-through cost? Whatever the spot price may be that day, or how does that typically work?
In order to bid and compare bids, customers will require a fuel base. So you'll say, I'm bidding this, assuming a fuel price of, say, $4 or $5 a gallon. Now, if the actual fuel price is $7, they get a supplemental invoice for the difference.
Are these FBO fuel prices, or are they the more?
Well, that's kind of like, if you look at the range of prices, FBO prices can go from $2 a gallon to $10 a gallon. Like they are drastically different. And so I think from our price, terminal prices are considerably less, but we'll quote the fuel base, and then they'll go, okay, well, this is where you actually flew, or this is where you're flying. This is what the supplemental invoice will be.
Interesting.
So what when you compare yourself to, like a scheduled service.
Yep.
What kind of utilization do you guys typically do with one airplane on an average year, right? Just for comparison.
So I think months. So our target is around 150 hours a month.
Okay.
And if you can get that on our and I think private jets they target between 50 and 80 hours a month, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're around 150. A scheduled person is probably trying to do between 300 and 400 hours a month. But what that allows us to do is allows us to use older aircraft, right? Because you can fly a 20-year-old aircraft 150 hours and have enough time in between to maintain it. Whereas if you try and put 400 hours on a 20-year-old aircraft, you'll get maybe 2 weeks out of it, and then it'll break. It breaks. And so one of the parts of our model is and this is kind of why the charter business kind of went away in the U.S. is the lease rates. As the lease rates went way up in the late 2016, 2017, 2018, it got to the math didn't work, right? Because you couldn't get for whatever you were paying for an older aircraft, it was really old. It was like 30 years old to make the model work. But when the lease rates kind of came down, it created an opportunity for us because then we can go get 15, 16, 18-year-old aircraft and then fly them 152 hours, 200 hours a month. And the math worked, right? Mm-hmm. And so it really comes down, ACMI, aircraft, crew, maintenance, and insurance, it's the A, right? So think of it this way. If a scheduled, say a brand new, and I'm making these numbers up, say a brand new aircraft is $400,000 a month lease, and they fly at 400 hours, their A is $1,000 an hour.
Yeah.
So if I'm only flying 150 hours a month, I got to get my A to be 1,000. So I got to get my leases in the $150,000 range. But if that means I'm flying a 30-year-old aircraft, then you sort of see how the dynamic shifts and changes. So we have to be really cognizant of when I think about an aircraft, it has like a couple stages to its life, right? It's the first 12 years where they can fly it a lot, 300-400 hours. Mm-hmm. We're never going to use we'll rarely use an aircraft like that. There are some opportunities in Europe and some ACMI contracts you can go get a younger aircraft and go make sense with that. The 12 to 18 year range, they start to get interested in us because we have some 200 plus month clients. We'll start looking at a 12 to 18-year-old aircraft. And then the next stage is the 18 to 24 because we're doing it in the 6-year gaps, right? That's your 150 to 200 hour. And then when you get to 24 plus, you don't want to be flying those even 150. You want to be flying them 80 to 100 hours. So one of the benefits of our model is we can extend the life of an aircraft because they only have so many cycles in them and they only have so many flight hours in them. If they fly really hard with a scheduled carrier for 18 years, we can make those last 12 years last longer, right? Whereas some of them will just die at 24, or some of them will die at 20. So that, as a result, has made us be. So when we talk to lessors and when we talk about aircraft and aircraft opportunity, I joke. I was like, we always have to have a deal with a little fur on it, right? Because if we're going to compete with a United, we're never going. No lessor is going to lease to us. They can lease the plane to United.
Right.
Just not going to do it. But if there's something with the engine, it's got short cycles, it needs more inspections. There's a reason for me to get that lease rate down or to purchase it for less. We'll take it because we have customers where we can use it for less per month, and the math still works.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah. I was actually going to be one of my questions about, with everything that's gone on since COVID, since you guys started up until today, where you've had not only, aircraft challenges in terms of trying to find airplanes, you've had crew challenges, I'm sure, at some point, I think that's probably gotten better, but still you had that. And then you've got, kind of everything else that's been, lease rates going back up.
Yeah.
How have you dealt with those challenges? And it's that you kind of answered that a little bit, but it'd be great to hear more about all those.
So, part of it is discipline. So I think we stopped growing for the sake of growth because we found the lease rates were getting high enough that we didn't feel we had enough the right customers to I couldn't match the plane to a customer and make money with it. So, you've seen us kind of, and there haven't been great opportunities to get aircraft. So we've just made do with what we had. Right. And I think where it's kind of interesting with the way the life cycle works on this is, when I talk to investors, I say we have 3 assets in this company, right? The first asset is the certification. The second asset is our crews, and the third asset is the aircraft, right? And so, but, one of the things we've seen with the aircraft engine problems and the delivery delays is the demand for crews has dropped. Right. So, it's kind of like if you look at those three legs of the stool, as the lease rates have gone up because demand for aircraft has gone up, the demand for crews has gone down. So that's gotten a little easier. I think as deliveries start picking up, crews will get a little more, will become more of a challenge. So, but we just have to be consciously cognizant of it and recognize we're not American United or Delta. We don't get to dictate the market. We're kind of takers of what the market looks like. And so the analogy I use is if aviation's a fishbowl and the big carriers are marbles, we're the water. We go to the gaps. So we have to constantly be looking to where the gaps are and how do we take advantage of it, because aviation's $1 trillion business and those gaps are billions of dollars. I don't have to be greedy, right? I'm not trying to create a $45 billion company, nor do I think I could. But I think that's where the opportunities are for what we do. And it's pretty unique in America because no one's really tried to do what we're doing at scale in the charter business. If you read the history, I recently reread that Hard Landing book, which is always a fun book to read. It's probably it's around. Yeah,
you can't see it. It's just off camera. It's is the Bible.
Yeah, it's no one writes about the charter companies, right? But they've been there. Right?
Good. I can't wait to read your book, Ryan.
Yeah, right.
I will.
No one writes about the charters ones have always been there. Well, they've always been in the background. They've always been kind of a pain, but they've always kind of existed.
It's true.
Trying to find where those gaps are, and I think with the dynamic in the U.S., there's gaps. There's pretty big gaps that we can go play in, and we're not. I don't see us as competition to the schedule. We kind of supplement, right? By the definition, supplemental carrier. We want to go either help them grow their business by providing lift when they don't have the capacity to do it. We want to go meet the customer needs. Like if you look at sports teams, we can provide a product that just doesn't make economic sense for the scheduled carriers. So they can focus on the thing that makes them the most money. Because I think when you read the book, and one of the biggest dangers, and we ran into it in the first earlier years, is there's so many different things you can do in aviation. So many. And they're all cool, and they're all bright, shiny objects. And if you try and do them all, you're bankrupt. You have to figure out what you're good at and just do that. And just do that and do that well. And that's what we've really tried to do over the last 12 months. And the other book is Good to Great that I talk about all the time. And they talk about the hedgehog strategy. And I say it ad nauseum here is, what do you want to be best in the world at? And what I say is I want to fly forgettable flights. Or what do you want to be passionate about? I want to fly forgettable flights. Because no one remembers a flight that left on time and arrives on time.
Yeah.
Right? They all remember the flights that had delays, mechanicals, bad weather, huge turbulence. So if we can be passionate about providing forgettable flights and really be just thinking about that, and then the best in the world at is you have to be, what are you best in the world at, is everything you do before you block off to get ready so you can leave on time and provide a forgettable flight. And that's the training, that's the dispatch, that's the crew scheduling, that's the hiring, that's the culture that you have before, and that's what we can be best in the world at, because we'll never be better at flying than United, right? It's so regulated. We're not doing barrel rolls and doing with these aircraft. We're told where to fly.
Neither is United that I know of.
But they're making money.
They could. I don't know. And they're making money, yeah. Look, I'm fascinated by the history of charter. I mean,
sure.
Like you mentioned this. So there have been charter airlines that no longer exist.
Correct.
I'm trying to touch on the subject of your competition without you having to talk about your competition, but
sure.
But am I right in thinking about, there used to be this strong charter only group of airlines, small group.
Yes. Yep.
But now, I think of Sun Country. I think of Delta's NBA charter. I don't even know if they still do it with the 757.
Yeah, they did. They did a great deal with the 321s. It's a really cool brand.
Okay. Is the charter model shifting to some of the larger scheduled carriers coming, I don't want to say down, but coming over into the charter more than we saw historically? Or is the charter business still, is it still kind of this core business in the U.S., the U.S. specifically, since that's what we're talking about? But
Right. So
is there a group of charter airlines that we're not all aware of? And you don't need to advertise for your competitors here,
Sure.
but has there been a shift in the industry is really what I'm asking.
No. I think scheduled carriers have always done some charter. Whether it's been it was for a customer or it was for marketing but it's really disruptive to a schedule operation, right? So
yeah.
Everything about scheduled carriers is about efficiency, utilization, getting pay to block on our pilots optimized. It's tough to optimize pilots when you fly to a game, the basketball team plays, the pilots stay overnight, and then they fly back, and they fly 6 hours in 2 days when they could have flown 16 in their schedule. I think there are, Sun Country obviously has a pretty strong charter section to them, but they've got very specific clients, and they've got a very specific niche they kind of play in. I think there's always been onesie twosies. It's been a very fragmented kind of space. There was a big group, iAero, which had gone and consolidated a whole bunch of charter operators, and they're no longer here. But from my perspective, I always feel like I need to be learning about what people did right and what they did wrong in the past. And I think, when you're thinking about what may have not gone right or wrong in the past, you want to make sure you have the right fleet for the mission. You want to make sure and by that mean the right age of fleet. You want to make sure you're constantly investing and you're matching. You're not trying to grow too fast. I think there are a lot of people who play in the charter space, but that's not what they do. I generally think if my impression of scheduled carriers is the most optimal use of their assets is in the schedule, but they'll put it in charter if they can.
Is it an off-season strategy?
It's kind of either an off-season or it's there are some one-off charters that are lucrative that make a lot of sense to go do.
Sure.
I think when you think about the ACMI model in Europe, it's huge, right? Like there's 600-700 aircraft in the ACMI model in Europe, and the main reason is some of the major carriers and the unions allow it, right? They allow a certain percentage because they deal with there's more seasonality in Europe.
Yeah.
But as you get more into the VFR kind of business in the U.S., I think you're seeing more seasonality in the U.S. too, which I'm not predicting it'll happen. I'm hopeful it will happen. That there's more openness on the major airlines to do the ACMI side of it to help flatten out some of those peaks and valleys, because there are pretty high peaks and valleys. And we learned this at Flair. The trick wasn't how much money you made in the summer. It was not giving it all back in the winter, right? And so
he knows the secret, Garrick.
Right? And so, but that's what ACMI is for. That's the whole purpose and design of ACMI is because they're aircraft and an aircraft can fly, they can go anywhere in the world. It makes sense for us to go somewhere for 3 months. Yeah. It makes sense for us to go for a month or 2 months and do X amount of a program of flying, because we don't have to build out an infrastructure. We don't have to build out a huge team. You can call me today, and within 3 hours, we can be deployed somewhere and operate for 2-3 months. And that helps you on AOGs. That helps you on fleet growth. That helps you on expansion. I think that's not a tool used by the majors because they don't need to. They haven't had to. But it's created those gaps in the marbles I talk about that are big enough that make sense for someone like us to do it. But no one's really done it like us at the scale we're trying to do it, with the age of aircraft we're trying to do it with, and passenger and cargo, because we have both.
So that's definitely something I want to get into, because I saw the 321 P2Fs, which are fascinating. But before we do,
sure,
I want to talk about this. I'm noticing kind of base 12 ages here. And is it that 12 year, that 24? Maybe this question is more for Garrick. Is that based around the 6 and 12 year checks on the 320?
Yes. Yeah.
And how impactful is that for, say, year 25?
Well, no, because then I'm thinking about year 30, right? So
it's not like
to get past 24, right? Yeah.
No, it's definitely not. But the problem is when you get, so it depends how many cycles and how many hours that plane's operated. They might have certain inspections, or they might have to do certain things that make it uneconomic for a scheduled carrier to do it. But if I've got a customer where I can make it the capital cost of that aircraft is low enough because it's old. I've got a program that's 50, 60 hours a month. I have enough downtime in between those flights that it's not an issue.
Yeah. Which, I that's probably appealing to, some of the more mature lessors that all of a sudden they've got airplanes coming off lease and the airline doesn't want it because it's old enough where they're like, hey, we're only going to get a couple years out of the airplane. It doesn't make sense for us to keep it. Right. So from that standpoint, it's probably when you get the calls and be like, hey, do you guys need you guys need some more airplanes? It's going to, you can run it for another couple of years.
Yeah.
And then we're going to just, pour it out or park it or whatever. Right. And that's probably gets more interesting for you.
Well, and it's interesting. I always feel like we're almost like the canary in the airline coal mine, because I could tell kind of the health of the industry by which lessors call us and the age of the aircraft I'm being called with, right? And so there was a point where no one would take. It was kind of like no one would take our call, and then there's the point where everyone was taking our call, and I'm like, oh, things must be rough if you're calling me.
Yeah. So where are we? Where are we right now?
Very self-aware, right?
Yeah, I think we're aware. Well, I think a couple things have changed. One, we've gotten healthier, right? So we're a little more viable as an entity. So it's kind of and as the deliveries start to come, you've seen the dynamic where airlines have extended these midlife aircraft they normally would have handed back, waiting for the delivery. But the reality is, if you have a 20-year-old aircraft, you're probably going to schedule it 200 hours. If you have a brand new aircraft, you're going to schedule it 400. So the second you can get one of those new ones, you're going to get rid of two old ones, is generally what you're going to start seeing. So I think we are getting, it's by no means a turn. I think the delivery hasn't been worked out. The engine issues haven't been worked out. There's still tons of airframes on the ground because they don't have engines. But I think as those airframes get there, if a scheduled carrier has to choose between a brand new and an 18-year-old aircraft, they're picking the brand new aircraft every single time. And so I think we're going to start seeing more. And there's not a lot of people who want a mid to late life aircraft because it doesn't necessarily match their model. It matches our model. And so I think we're a pretty good option for those. We're starting to get more of those calls, but by no means has the supply chain issue been fixed. It's not fixed.
Yeah, it's only starting to get better.
Right.
That's yeah. So you still have a little bit of room, but and has the Spirit Airlines situation, has that kind of impacted you at all, or has that created opportunities for you at all? We have 218 aircraft. They're, by all indications, they're bankrupt right now, so they're trying to figure out what they're going to do next. Are they going to hand back aircraft? We don't know. What are they going to hand back? You'd think if they're going to hand anything back, it'd be the older ones first. They're all N registered. They're literally probably 2 miles from our headquarters. Mm-hmm. We're an obvious place that we'd be interested in those type of aircraft. I think the impact of Spirit's probably more on some of the newer scheduled carriers out there. As you can't have a 200 aircraft airline scaling back operations and not create opportunities. Yeah, of course. We're not going to fly those routes, right? If for us it'd be in the middle, it'd be crews, it'd be office kind of people, just because our headquarters are so close to each other. But it's a pretty disruptive event, and I think we're going to see something in U.S. aviation. I don't purport to know what it's going to be, but it feels like it's going to be different. Yeah.
Yeah, and so your comment on the new versus used is interesting. Obviously, from your perspective, I think it's pretty cut and dry, right? I mean, low utilization, low acquisition costs, keep fixed costs low.
Yeah.
The dynamic, though, on the new aircraft side for the scheduled airlines and whether or not they hang on to the used airplane, that 18, 20-year asset, and switch to new, I think purely is a function of what's coming from the new. So you mentioned supply chain issues, the engine issues, just the availability of new. But the other dynamic that I think is really interesting is the backlog. Like, one does not just show up and be like, I'll take a new airplane off the showroom floor,
right,
and start flying it. That works. That cuts both ways for those airlines in how they consider that second life aircraft, whether or not they hold on to it. For one, the backlog's so long that airplane you've been waiting for, but it's coming come hell or high water. Like it's gonna show up.
Yep.
Then the decision point isn't whether or not you take that new airplane. Like, you're taking it.
Yeah. What you
the
do with
question
the old.
is, do I need the capacity for the old? Now, recently, they've needed the capacity because the new aren't showing up, or they're on the ground, or the airlines are saying, look, I need to be a little fat on aircraft simply because I just saw what happened and I don't want to be short, capacity. But from your perspective on, and I'm interested on the 320 specific market. Are you seeing? I mean, you kind of mentioned that there's some. I guess I wouldn't call it softening of that market, just less hardening. Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Because it was so scarce. You alluded to there's more availability today, but in terms of those vintages, is it pretty well fixed what you need? Is it right in that time frame? Are you seeing earlier vintages looking for homes later? How is that?
Well, we see. It's just a function of price, right? And so I think you can get the earlier vintages; they're more expensive. One of the things we've talked about here is, our next aircraft we're getting is we bought the airframe and we leased the engines. Because right now, especially with the older aircraft, all the value is in the engines, right? So if it's a 20-year-old 320, say it's $20 million. The engines are 19 of it, right? And that's a byproduct of supply chain and I think a distortion. So for us, it makes sense to buy the airframe because the airframe's kind of valued where it would traditionally be closer to the mean. Lease engines, and then when the engine market, if the engine market gets better, it could get worse, who knows? But if it gets better, then we have an opportunity to acquire the engines, and then I put together a plane at a lot lower cost, then it makes sense. Than it would have been if I just straight out bought it. And so I think the story's all in the engines right now. It's all in the engines, and the ability to get engines available, and that's driving the value of everything.
Yeah. Although I think that
segue.
from your side, you probably have, because of your lower utilization model, right? There's probably opportunities there where you've got.
So we'll go to we'll go to the engine guys and say, hey, do you have a stub life engine with 1,000 hours left? Because I can make that thing work for 15 minutes, right? So give me a deal, or give me a good economics, or again, as maybe someone they wouldn't normally work with, they'll work with us because that's the fur I talk about. We put a little fur on those things. Because I also have time in between flights to swap an engine out, right? And so those are just other ways for us to try and squeeze the penny out of this business, right? Because this is a highly competitive business. There's not fat margins. You have to be efficient and smarter and have a different way of doing things because you don't have the scale of the big guys.
That's actually a trend that we've been talking about quite a bit, is just the shift to the value of an engine being just purely in green time.
Yep.
So the available time, the core is what it is, but a full-time engine, and Garrick, we've actually done some analysis on this, but a full-time engine is going to have a premium.
Yes.
Right? Even today, just in terms of market, because the alternative, and I'm really talking about CFM 56-5s, right? Which I think, if I'm looking at power the majority of all of your 320s, I think, actually.
With the Vs are on the 321s.
So you've got, that time available, but because that green time is so valuable, when you get down to stub lives 1,000, 2,000 hours, you don't carry the same. It's not like that. The hour value isn't as high, isn't as same. Not just the absolute, but the per hour, because you're that much closer to having to put that thing into the shop.
Right.
So you should be able to get a discount. I'm running through our hypothesis, agree or disagree with it at any point along here.
Sure. But
a stub life engine should be able to deliver more value for you.
Yes.
A discount to the seller, because the time that engine is available in terms of just number of operations left before it has to go back in the shop is so less. But for you, your low utilization. So you're actually expanding that time before it actually goes into the shop.
Correct. It's 100%.
I see the arbitrage play. Well played, good sir.
Thank you. Well, and you to take it the next step, right, is if you say you've got 20 engines you need to overhaul that are on short life, but you can't get the next engine in for the next 9 months. It's going to sit there.
Yeah.
Right. And so and that's why working with some of the engine groups, we've been able to secure engines and constantly are having that conversation. Now, that's labor intensive. It's hard. It's tough to do at scale, but we're not scale. We're 18 aircraft. We have the ability to do that.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's why also the ability, the latest, not really latest trend, but, I guess one of the trends that's been picking up over the last few years has been kind of the module swaps on the engine side, which is probably very interesting for you as well, right? Because you're probably looking at those and going, yeah, you know what, we can definitely utilize that so we don't have to put our engine into shop for, like, say, 9 months. Yeah. We're able to get them a little bit quicker, and we don't have to build an engine to, 5,000 hours or 10,000 hours, which is what everybody else is going to want, right? So, really interesting. I'd love to shift a little bit maybe on the cargo side,
sure,
which to me is probably, it's a little bit different from at least the way that we look at it, where I think the domestic cargo side has definitely been softer for the last several years, right? I feel like during 2001, everybody seemed to jump in because that was a great opportunity.
A lot of
and then right, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, by the way, passenger side is back. Domestic cargo is down. Now what? So it's probably created some opportunities for you. But so I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of how you guys are looking at that right now.
So we have the 321 PDAF. One of the benefits of the Airbus family of aircraft is our crews are interchangeable across all our aircraft, right? So whether you fly the 319, the 320, the 321, the 321 freighter, or even a 330, same crew, don't have to have different classes. They can move. When I talk about those assets, right, the crew asset, they can move between them. The business model for us is similar in this fact that we're not selling freight, we're not selling positions, we're selling the whole aircraft. So that's similar. We think the 321 freighter is a unique value proposition, and really what it comes down to is when you look at an Airbus, they're a bit bigger, and their bellies are a bit bigger, so you could put containers in the belly. So you have when you look at cubic feet of containerized space. It's a long sentence. It's 55% more cubic feet than a 737.
Yeah.
Because you can't put containers in the belly on a 73. It's bulk, right? So when you look at the package carriers, the post office, they space out before they bulk up, right? Before they weigh out, sorry. They space out before they weigh out. And so when you look at the unit economics on a 321 freighter, it makes a ton of sense, which was great in 2000, which was great in 2021 and 22. And then right when we got certified, the bottom fell out. Yeah. And I think one of the reasons the bottom fell out was a couple reasons. One, the post office changed their business model, right? They went from FedEx to UPS and took billions of dollars out of the market overnight. Because of COVID, any airframe with an engine and wheels that was a cargo aircraft was put into service, and it was making great money. So you had way too many aircraft in the space. And really, when you see such a fundamental shift between FedEx and UPS and just the way the whole domestic market's working, it takes time for those cracks between the marbles to appear. Those marbles turned into sand, right? And they got shattered. And so finding the gaps is really, really hard. We originally had 15 aircraft slated to be delivered by last year, which, when I got moved into my current role, we went on we basically did everything we could to delay, defer. We took some of them as passenger versus converting them because we just didn't see the market for it yet. But the underlying thesis we have is there's over 300 757s operating cargo in the U.S. Right. Their average age is 30, 35 years old. When those planes get closer to 40 and those engines start to die, eventually the capacity will come out, and then we'll be competing with either a 7.6 or a 7.3. And I think if there's enough, it's tough to compete with a 7.6 because of the range and just how much they can take. but I feel really comfortable on a 5 less hour flight competing with the 737. And I think that what our unique position is we're the only Airbus cargo operator in the narrow-body space in North America. We have a crew. We have 150 crew who can fly Airbus freighters. Anyone who wants to compete with us or catch up to us is years behind us. And so while cargo hasn't been a boom for us, I think there's value in learning how to run a cargo operation. We got 4 aircraft. They're the expectations of a DHL or an Amazon for on time and reliability are extremely high. And you have to be very, very good at what you do in order to work for them. And I think we've taken advantage of the last 2 years of cargo operations to get better every day. We're not there yet. But when that market turns, is that a 30, 40, 50, 100 aircraft market opportunity, of which we are the only player with a competitive advantage, with crews already in place, with operating space in place. I think it puts us in a really good spot 5 to 10 years from now. I think 5 to 10 years from now, I'll be like, thank goodness we spent all that time and effort on cargo. Right now, it doesn't feel great, but
and how do you fit your business model into the cargo world specifically? Is it charter, ACMI?
ACMI. Well, we generally do ACMI, but we'll do full charter. Or we'll do ACMI-F, so we'll do the ACMI and the fuel because we have the efficiency. It depends on the customer. We work for about 4 or 5 customers now, and they kind of have their own unique way of wanting to contract with us. The beauty of being small and kind of I don't want to call us a startup anymore, but a young airline, is we have the flexibility to price and structure it whatever makes the most sense.
So what about the ground infrastructure? Everything that's all the GSE, whatever, and I'm even thinking container utilization and container rotation. Is that something that you provide, or is that more just already built into your customers' business?
We have at Miami a ground team at Miami where we do our own fueling, baggage handling. We can do even check-in. That's the only place where we have it. For cargo specifically, we'll just use a provider, and our customers generally have their own infrastructure for that.
So, what about containers specifically? Do you own a ship set of containers?
We lease a whole bunch. Yeah.
And the reason why I'm so interested on containers is because I'm not entirely sold on the value of the belly containerized option for the 321, because of container rotation, because of the add the tearaway. I mean, with the complication, what the containers get you is that really kind of quick turn. But if you're not turning it to another 321, you still got to tear down the container. And in order to get that speed, you got to have 2, one that goes back on the airplane. And are you seeing the belly containers be used, or are you only topside? I mean, as much as you can share.
They're using the whole thing. They'll use the whole thing because it's also, it's not efficient to send some stuff in nets, right? So that's why it's really package e-commerce kind of focus, right? And so that's in that area. And containers aren't super expensive. And, the speed at which we can turn a load and offload is incredibly fast for the amount of cubic feet we can move, right? We can take 18% more cubic feet than a 7.5. Right, and our fuel burns 400 less gallons per hour. So there's a built-in cost advantage. So
18% more containerized volume.
Containerized volume.
Got it. Yeah.
Right. So
those bellies are massive.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, but bulk loaded. In fairness, right?
Yeah, they can bulk load.
And the time it takes,
they can do it. So it is definitely a niche. So it's you think about how many freight cargo aircraft there are. We're not thinking we're going to be the be all and end all, but there's a market that makes a lot of sense for these aircraft. And again, that's the swimming to the gaps, right? Is finding where those gaps are and filling it.
And you see the market for you specifically on the P21 or the P to F being, ACMI Express versus e-commerce versus pure charter. I mean, where do you kind of what's your positioning for that future growth?
I think
All the above is a
well,
fine
probably
answer.
all the above. I think that the ACMI is probably the one that we would want to get into because it's the highest utilization
Sure.
and that makes the most sense. But we're scrappy. We literally, every week publish, I call it the white space thing internally and say, okay, here's the days the planes aren't flying. Go sell something. And if you could pick off a one-off flight, we go do it. But once that plane gets committed to a program, then it's gone. And that's kind of the goal, is to get it into a program. And then once they're all in programs, then go get another one. And then start it with charter and then go get into a program and get another one. And that's how we'll grow it. That's kind of how we did passenger.
Any specialized cargo, like live animals or anything like that you...
We've done it. We've done it, but those are kind of one-offs. There's not a huge, we've done horses. I know we've done horses.
That's the big one, right?
That's the big one, yeah.
I spent 2 years at DHL years ago. And I'll tell you, my big learning from that time was just how much details matter. And I know that...
Oh, yeah,
I know that's like, duh, no kidding. We're in aviation, details matter, but even more so, how boxes are funny. They can't walk themselves on or off the airplane, and they tend to catch on fire. So there's that. But they also don't complain.
Sure.
And you can jam way more in, but that requires this whole infrastructure. Correct. That's why my questions are more kind of based around that infrastructure and how you fit into it. And where kind of you see that market going. E-commerce side, I could totally see. I mean, yeah, let's be frank. I don't know if you're working for Amazon, but Amazon is like, their big concern is don't screw up Christmas.
Perfect.
Right?
Yeah.
Just don't do that again, because that wasn't fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everyone is right, but them being the retailer,
yeah,
right? They're kind of even more so. So now we have a peak season, right? Yep. For which, by the way, I mean, from what we can tell, Amazon has in some way priced their sized their entire network for that peak season already. So there's some built in, but still there's the cost of failure is so high.
Yes.
During that period. And you're right, it's not just Amazon. I mean, it's a cargo thing. I mean, we get the global cargo thing. We get that spike around that time. But it's that infrastructure and how you fit in the specific business model that I'm most interested in. And the reason why I'm so focused on those belly containers is because they're unique. They're unique containers. They're not the A containers topside. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you can slide one of those out and put it into a 7.6 if it's a AAY, or a 7.2 if they have those anymore. But those belly containers are so unique and so specific. It requires some investment, whether it be from you, whether it be from your customers. You mentioned leasing. Maybe those belly containers
do. Not so much the containers that's the expense. It's the infrastructure, like in the sorting facility and how they get packaged and all that stuff.
Right.
Which is why, despite the unit economics being so compelling, it hasn't happened overnight. And I think that's why we have to prove it, right? You have to, one, prove you're going to be able to get big enough, prove you're strong enough as an operator, because the package guys aren't going to make the investment required to make it make sense unless they know there's a partner on the other side who can actually execute on it. And for that reason, it's taking longer.
I mean, I remember one of the many big learnings I had at DHL was the idea that, okay, we pull a 727, because I was working 727s, DC9s, DC8 63s. It was amazing. It was a great, you could count how many engines were on our airplanes by the smoke trail that came off the back of it. It was perfect. And every time one of those left, you knew it because you felt it rumble deep in your soul. But the point being, whenever we pulled a 7.2 up to a market, and it had 12 A containers topside, if I'm remembering correctly, I had to set up 18 or 53-foot trailers to move empty trailers back to that airplane. to keep that rotation. So now suddenly we have to cost not only the aircraft, the truck that's moving the containers from the airport to where we're going, but then that full rotation to make sure that there's containers available to go back on the airplane to make sure that everything's balanced, so you don't just have a bunch of containers sitting around.
Correct.
In airport. And that was very expensive.
Yes.
It was so expensive. There's no question here. That's why I'm so fascinated by the infrastructure.
And that's why there's not 200 321s today, right?
Interesting. Fair enough.
It's a lot easier to stick with the Boeing product. It's a lot easier because that's what you've always done. So in a weird way, this kind of goes back to my time in Halliburton. One of my first departments I worked in was new technology development, and I was there when they were launching fracking. So,
hey, how'd that turn out?
It worked out. It worked out real well. And it wasn't so much the concept of fracking that had been around a long time. It was multi-stage fracking, where you would which is what ended up making shale economic. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you, those first couple years, everyone looked at you like you were, wow, we're going to have to do this and we're going to have to do that. And so it's when it's a behavior change and it requires certain infrastructure investment, it's going to take longer. And so have we kind of placed a bet that will play out? Yes. Does it have to happen for it to be successful? No, I think there's a market for 4. We could stay at 4 forever and just run the 4. And if it never pans out, fine. But what if it does? What if it does and those unit economics start making sense? And okay, now they're coming to us and says, okay, we need 30, right? So then we're a 60, 70 airplane operation. That's a substantial operation in the U.S.
Yeah. So you mentioned before talking about going out and purchasing airframes, right? Yep. And so I'm wondering, on the A321 front, right? Are you seeing opportunities where you could pick up basically what Courtney coined a couple of years ago, a pre-converted airframe, knowing that, the engine market is so strong that, hey, we're, those will probably get leased and whoever invested in that airplane, right, they can probably make some sense of kind of writing down the asset if they don't, if they don't have to place it at a really low rate. But are you seeing opportunities like that? Is that something that you guys look at, kind of knowing, hey, this, because we already have 4, because we already have, the crews for it, let's try to plan maybe a little bit ahead so that as we see more opportunities, we've got the lift. All we just need to basically, if there's opportunities, we move the engines and we're good to go, right? How do you guys look at that?
There's too many people with that idea, and we're not big enough to do it. I think a lot of people have had that concept on the 321s, so the 321 frames have gotten really expensive. And the unit economics of converting and leasing back out, I think there's a lot of money that's gone into that, and we don't have enough money to compete on that space. So we're kind of a price taker versus trying to make that bet. I think it makes more sense for us on the passenger, the 320s and the 319s. The whole, because the amount of capital required to do the conversion and then kind of go through that life cycle, people with much more money than us and resources than us have already made that bet. You got to know where you stand at the table, right?
Yeah,
and, I used to joke when I was working on oil and gas deals in Houston, for example, if a deal from Calgary came to Houston, I'd be like, why are they here? Because they talked to everybody who knows the market in Calgary, and they all said no, so they came to Houston. And vice versa, when you're in Calgary and a Houston oil deal showed up in Calgary, you'd be like, why are you here? There's more than enough smart money in Houston to do this deal. Yeah. If you're here, and that's who we would be, right? We would be the guy at the group on the wrong side of the market. They're talking to us because people have passed, and we just can't compete with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And have you looked at the A320 at all? I mean, it obviously hasn't.
We did look at that as a freight option, and we've talked to our, and we were looking to do that pretty early on. But I think when the market kind of got poor before we committed, and so everything we kind of got to, we knew we were committed to the 4 freighters. We're going to stick to 4 until the market gets stronger.
Those, good choice. Those 320s would be the spill airplane, right?
Yeah.
For the entirety of the package freighter market, they would be the first to fall off. So great during good times, but so need to be priced accordingly, right?
And they weren't.
Yeah, because
Oh,
I mean,
there you go.
the freighter converter is probably very similar to what you're going to spend on the A321, right?
imagine,
Yeah, the
probably
math
not much difference.
the math on the conversion, they were still going to have to lease these things out, and you'd be competing with 40-year-old 737s that are fully depreciated and just burning off the last breath of those airframes, and you'll never be able to compete with that.
And that's so. How much of that the Boeing expertise in freighters, whether they be factory or converted, but I guess specific to the 738, how much of that do you see as a headwind for selling space on the 321, whether how it fits in the networks, the infrastructure, or just the mentality? Is it an uphill battle?
Yeah, I think there's a certain level of acceptance. There's I think you think about the cargo market, it's pretty Boeing dominated, and they're comfortable with what they know. Again, I draw my oil and gas stuff. If you had a new technology that no matter how much money it would make the oil field, how much more profitable it would be, no one ever got fired for doing what everyone's done. You did get fired if you did something different and it didn't work. Or you could become the hero by doing something different and it was amazing. But very few people want to take that, right? So
yeah, but the chance that you're still employed by the time they realize it was amazing is so low. You're not going to.
Well, in oil and gas, it's pretty fast.
Oh, okay. Well, good for you. It's not so great here.
But it's a similar sales cycle, right? And so I think, part of us is we just have to get really good at operating and demonstrate the economics of the aircraft. And I think eventually, we could be wrong, but hopefully the economics will demonstrate. But we also have the value in the sense of our crews are not dedicated to cargo, right? So if the utilization is lower on those cargo aircraft and our passengers really busy as it has been, the crews are moving over to the passenger side.
I mean, in fairness, in the 90s, Airbus was saying the same thing. Like, look, you should, consider the switch. It's all Boeing. You should consider the switch. And that didn't really work out well for anybody, did it? I mean, Airbus hasn't done much since. So, I mean, it's only a matter of time, quite frankly, is the point that I'm making. Well, and by the way, the reason that you even kind of mentioned originally, it has to only be a matter of time because there's nothing else. The further we go out, you run out of airplanes. The 757, the 73, by the way, is a great freighter, but it's not that big. It's not as big as the 321. The 76, by the way, great freighter, running out of those. Yeah. Right. So until they start cutting holes in the side of the composite skin of a 788, which is years away if they can, there is nothing.
Yes. That's the bet. And I think that's a long bet, right? Because
gotta be patient.
Airlines, especially cargo operators, have a special knack of making planes live longer than maybe they should. A lot longer. But the other, like I said, the other differentiator we have for us is we didn't launch as a cargo operator in the Airbus. We launched as an Airbus operator, and we just happened to play in all the different opportunities they have.
Yeah. So you mentioned, in terms of that crew commonality, you touched on the A330. Is that something that you guys have looked at, whether it be on the passenger or the freighter side, that you could get to at some point? Or, I know that the cargo side gets, all A330s are getting to be expensive again, just because the demand there. But is that something that you would look at or you've looked at?
So when I talked about earlier about there's so many different things you can do in aviation, there's so many different opportunities. And very early on, we talked about pretty consistently that we're going to expand into the 330 because of the commonality in the cockpit and the efficiency and all that stuff. What we came to realize as a strategy is there is so much demand in the narrow body charter. Until I max that out, why would I distract myself by going? Because it's a completely different business. I think I had one lessor say is you add a zero to everything when you go into the wide body.
Before the decimal point.
Yes, exactly. Yes, before.
Right, and that's the key.
That's the key. Because I asked where do you add it? And so from our perspective, yes, it makes sense at some point to expand into that. But I'm not done growing the narrow body. I'm nowhere close to filling near capacity on the narrow body opportunities. So in the effort to keep people focused and keep the business concentrated, focus on that first.
And right now, I mean, it's interesting. We're in a very unique market, and I do want to talk about feedstock and how you think about that. But we went through this period of post-COVID of narrow bodies coming back, roaring back, simply because of production, and largely because of, I would argue, overproduction of wide bodies leading into COVID. We did not see that on the wide body space until recently. Right. That market, especially the 330s. I mean, Garrick, disagree with me if you feel like it, but I mean, seems to be quite a delayed yet strong market for those 330 COs right now that we didn't see coming right out of COVID.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's the other reason why we stopped looking at it, right? Because we're I don't know, are we a value operator? I don't know if that's the right way to look at it, but we're always looking for, here's the thing, is if in aviation, if you have the right metal at the wrong price, I don't care how good your business model is, you're gonna fail, right? It's almost as important as getting the right metal for the right mission. People just think metal and mission. No, it's the right metal at the right price for the right mission. And as you sort of, again, realizing we're not the tail that wags the dog. We are the flea on the end of the tail. And so if the market's moving somewhere in force, which it does in this space, we're going to be a price taker. And if the price that's being dictated kind of kills the economics, we have to focus on what we can do. And so our market still we sort of stopped paying attention because the prices started going up and up. Now, it made a ton of sense in 2021 and 2022 when we were first starting, because some of these lease rates on these 330s were lower than what some of these narrow body rates were.
Yeah.
So it would have made a ton of sense to do it. But the problem was there wasn't a lot of customers for it, which is why the lease rates were so low.
It was so well, yeah. You see, right? You see how this works.
Yeah, and so that's really what it's shocking. Supply and demand. The economics work that way.
Yeah.
So we just have to make sure we don't try and compete with the big guys, because we just can't.
Look, you've already mentioned all the quotable moments from the book that's yet to be written. Just put those in and just write around them. Like, come on, this is hard landing. Hard landing 2 or
Well, I don't want it to be hard landing 2 because that means we didn't work out, right? You want it to be soft landing, or
Actually, so no, that's fair. It's got to be something charter, because by the way, there needs to be a hard landing 2. I'm not going to write it. It's
I
just
agree. They're not done.
There's been so much. That book ended in 93.
Yeah,
the story, and nothing's happened since then. Clearly, in aviation.
No.
But so we'll set that aside. That needs to happen. It's my life goal to find somebody to write that. It's not going to be me. But you're not wrong. There's a charter side, right? Yeah, you could. I wouldn't call it unscheduled landing, but whatever.
No, No, have it your way. I think about my Burger King. Have it your way, right?
There you go. Yeah, from Burger King to planes. Have it your way.
Yeah. And I think charter's there's always been a space for it in the market, and it's constantly evolving. And when we talk to our new pilots and our new crews, we say, listen, the thing that makes us different and the thing that makes us successful is we have to be super, super flexible, right? We have to be able to be responsive and flexible, which is the antithesis of what a scheduled service is, because to be efficient, you have to be rigid and planned, right? Like, it's not uncommon for us to get a call and be wheels up in 3 hours to do a rescue flight and anywhere in the world. And we've done that. And it takes kind of a special operation to do it. And I think that's the DNA we're trying to build here to be differentiated. Because you talk about how do you make yourself different than everyone else, because we can't do it on scale. We can't do it, but we could do it on that stuff, which happens before you take off.
How do you find recruiting into that style of business? I'm thinking specifically the pilots through the challenges, the specific U.S. challenges that we went through.
Yeah, I think it's a tale of two worlds, right? Like, so we'll get a lot of first officers who are using us as a stepping stone to get type rated and into the majors. And so we'll expect a certain rotation. We'll also get a certain first officer who really wants to be captains for all the reasons you'd want to be captain. And they'll get there faster through us. We also tend to have a lot of success with captains in the last 10 years of their career. For whatever reason, they've made changes. Yep. They've worked abroad. They've come back to the U.S. They don't want to go to the right seat at the bottom of the seniority level. Yep. We can do direct entry captains. Our routes tend to be there and back. We tend not to have a lot of overnights. We're not, most of our, if we get 50 hard hours, flight hours out of a captain in a month, that's a good month. And it's just a different lifestyle, right? And so we've really had to recruit differently. We're never, if you look at what the majors are trying to recruit, and we're never going to win that battle. So it's kind of like leasing aircraft. We recruit a different kind of pilot, and where it's benefited us, especially with some of the pilots in their last 10 years of their career, is we got really experienced, fantastic captains who've really, because from when we talk about our on-time performance, I think of the captains as the CEO of every flight. There's no person who has a greater impact on a charter flight of leaving on time than the captain, because they know 90 minutes before departure, is the catering there, is the fuel truck there, has the MELs been signed off, is the gen deck done, is the flight plans done, is the weight and balance done. They know if it's not done by a certain period before takeoff, it's not going to get done on time, and they're the ones who have to raise the holy heck to go get it done. And so having those pilots with that entrepreneurial kind of CEO mindset in the cockpit, I think is another thing we want to eventually just use to differentiate ourselves.
That's a real thing. When I started my career, actually before I went to the airlines, I flew some corporate. It was effectively corporate charter. Go through all the training, all the simulator events, turn everything, all the emergencies, everything. I knew that airplane inside and out. The first day I show up, ready to go, they say, great, go make the coffee. And I'm staring at this coffee maker and I have no idea what I'm doing.
Right.
And by the way, you don't want to screw up the coffee for these passengers. But the mindset is different. It's very different. Like you said, you're leading that flight. The buck stops with you. When it got to the airlines, it was more call dispatch, they'll figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, for better or for worse, I mean, it's that structure around it, but it's very different when you are truly ultimately responsible for that flight.
Well, yeah, because we our pilots all do, everyone does a walk around, but they do before and after the flight. They write it up and they work with the MCC. It's a significantly more involved job. More involved, but we ask them to do probably more than they would normally do in a schedule operation, because the analogy I use is when I was at Halliburton, for example, and I was in the finance group and I had a problem with tax, I called the tax department. And when I had a problem with legal, I called legal and all that. When I went to a startup after it was a Shell technology venture startup as the CFO with a staff of one, I'm CFO, congratulations, I had a staff of one. I'd call tax and the phone would ring at my desk. Right? I call legal, my phone rings. Oh,
that's me, Ryan.
It's me. It's me and Google. It's me and Google, right?
Google.
We don't have a massive infrastructure for some of these guys to rely on, so we rely on our captains with their experience to help to play a bigger role. And we also rely on our dispatchers and our OCC. And for some people and some recruits, they enjoy it, right? Like if you don't like what you're doing at a charter airline, just wait. It's going to be different within, but if you want to fly LA to New York for the next 15 years, that's not us, right? But if you want to fly to Reykjavik, and if you want to fly to Romania, and then you want to fly to Colombia, and then you want to fly to Brazil, and then you want to fly to Kansas, all in the same month, then that's us.
It's fascinating. I mean, the Kansas less so, but
all the
everything
other
else.
we've gone to Greenland, we've gone to 65 countries.
Yeah,
right. We're a tiny airline by world standards, and we've been to 65 countries, 300 plus airports.
And forgive me for not knowing this, but are you operating under 135 or
121 flag?
So it is 121. Okay, so you're still subject to all the same crew rules and all that. Okay.
Yeah, we're a 121 flag, domestic and supplemental. Which is a huge differentiation for us, and we're EASA certified, so we can fly for other airlines as under their call signs or under ours. And so it's a huge differentiator for us. It allows us to take groups, we can take, like I said, we have the same standards, we have the same, FAA regulations as the majors, and we adhere to them.
So I think I know the answer to this, but any aspirations to go into scheduled service?
Do it. Yeah. It's sexy.
Right? I mean, because we've seen that before, right? Where people all of a sudden be like, hey, we've done this really well. We're going to give it, we're going to have some schedule. And it doesn't usually end up working well. So I'm just curious.
Because they're completely different businesses. Right? Yeah. It's really, really hard to do both. Right? I think back to MBA school, and they called it stuck in the middle. Right? You kind of had the Walmart and you had the Target, and Kmart was the brand that was in the middle. Right? They tried to do both. The high and the bulk load. And it goes back to, again, the hedgehog thing, keep it simple. Know what you're good at and do it. If I get to, and that being said, some countries done it really well, right? Like they have the three legs. They have cargo, they have scheduled, they have charter. But their charter is very specific. They have some very big clients, and it's very
almost three airlines.
It's almost three airlines, right? Yeah. When I
the airline that comes to mind for me is Allegiant. Actually, they were successful in making that shift, and I'm sure they still do
charter. They still do quite a bit of charter, but they eventually grew and made the shift. But we're so far away. That's gonna be someone else's problem. I think there's enough.
That is how a CEO talks and things.
I'm telling you, CEO's job. That's the next CEO's job.
So then, from that standpoint, like. If you look 5 years down the road, how do you see Global X at that point?
So it's because of the way we source aircraft, we get aircraft, and because of the nature. So when you look at schedule, you can just publish a schedule and you're bigger, right? But you have to have the money to absorb the growth and the loss. We need to find the customers, right? We need to make sure there's a customer in place, so we need to make sure we've got the growth opportunities there. We've set a nominal goal of 4 to 6 aircraft a year, whether they're passenger or freight. And that's pretty healthy growth on an 18 fleet airline. So if I can do that for the next 4 years, I'm almost double, right? And I'm over double in size. That's good for the next 4 to 5 years. I don't have to, and the great thing about doing that is I don't have to worry about anything else. I don't have to worry. Like, here's the other problem with schedule. I don't have the infrastructure to do it. I don't know how to sell a ticket. I don't know how to market. I don't have a brand.
Right. Yeah.
I don't have my marketing department is one, and I don't have a ticket. I don't have a customer service center, right? All the stuff that comes along with scheduled service. I don't have. I'd have to create, and it's when we started early. We had the idea of we'll just at peak season we'll dabble and we'll fly some Miami Vegas routes, and we'll just put it in GDS, and you put it in GDS, you'll price it a certain thing, they'll just fill it. That doesn't happen. It just doesn't work. And so we quickly realized that's not what we're good at. That's not what our expertise is. It's not our scale. Focus on what we can do and grow that. I don't think we're going to max out that passenger side. And you talk about the freight opportunity. What if freight becomes a 20, 30 aircraft opportunity? Mm-hmm. Now you're talking about a 10-year time horizon of just doing this, right? And then it might sound boring, but this is not a boring. We call it, I joke at home, how was the global coaster today, right? What happened? And there's enough interesting stuff that happens. I don't need to make it harder.
Yeah, I mean, here's a chapter for your book in the stay in your lane chapter. UPS, when they played around with passenger, were you aware of this?
No.
They had some 727-100s that I can't remember if they were combi, but they had the weird Rolls engine on them, and they tried to make it go kind of what you're suggesting there, just more extreme of passenger and cargo. And spoiler alert, it didn't go so well.
Shocker. Yeah.
Real quickly regarding feedstock, I was kind of flipping through your fleet here. That's why I wasn't kind of staring at the screen the whole time. But I noticed that the vast majority of your 320s basically are ex-Virgin America airplanes that I would assume you source from Alaska, kind of through that merger process they went through. How important are sister ships to you in this fleet and the 320 family?
It's great if you can get them. I think having, the way we started, we effectively bootstrapped this airline, right? And so you didn't have the luxury of picking what you got. obviously when Alaska said we're going to go to all Boeing and they're getting rid of all the 320s, we were like, every single one of them, we called the lessor, whoever had it, whoever owned it, we wanted that plane. And we got effectively sister ships. Sister ships are great. And I think, commonality amongst flight computers, commonality amongst brakes and wheels, commonality amongst seats are great. I would love to have more of that, just whether the opportunity is there or not. And so I think when we were growing, it was when they were phasing those out. They're registered. It was easy to place, and so we managed to secure quite a few of them. We have a group that basically just tracks tails all over the world. So we know where most of the 320s are, who leases them, who owns them, and we cold call, and we'll be like, all right, what do you got? I get sometimes we get we're bigger now, so we get some more inbounds, but we are not shy about cold calling. Like, for example, with the Spirit opportunity, you said, how's that going to impact you? Well, we know who all the lessors of all the tails are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're calling every one of them. Because if you want to place an aircraft fast, there's no faster way to do it than to another unregistered operator.
It's a 5-minute flight.
Yeah. Well, and from your side, you're also very little reconfiguration, probably.
Yellow,
right?
right?
Yeah.
We'll leave it yellow if you want, but and so those are what we call the furry special opportunities we'll go get. If we can go get a bunch of common aircraft at the right price, again, right metal, right price, we would absolutely do that.
Wow. Well, look, this is, we're getting on the hour and a half here, which is great. But it's been absolutely fantastic to chat with you about all the things you guys have done at Global X and what you've done, with your career. So thank you for taking the time. It's a really interesting business model that, as you said, not a ton of people talk about. So it's great to kind of get your views on what it's all about. So I'm sure our listeners will definitely love that. So thank you for making the time.
Of course. And, the interesting thing being a public company, it's all out there. Like, it's all, we file Ks and Qs. Yeah. It's all out there. There's more about us. And, I always get mad when I see the LinkedIn, they list the operating margins of the company. I'm like, why aren't we on the list? We're like, we have a positive operating margin. We're not in the bottom. We're in the middle to top half.
Yeah.
Because we're public. We're small, and there's never airlines at our stage and our size are never public. They just never have been. So there's never been that transparency forced. We clearly would rather not talk about it every day to give insight into it. And I think it's a pretty cool opportunity for people to learn what we're doing.
I'll offer. So first of all, I'll tell Jay that Jay Shabat usually does.
He's the one who I email. He's the one I email.
So
it's like, hey,
I'm going to tell him that. But two sides to that argument. One, listen, you're doing well because you're not scheduled, and that's different, right?
Sure.
I call that, in the terms of operating margins, I call that cheating because
we have a better model.
Because you have a better model, yes.
All right. Well, if you're an investor, do you want to invest in the best model or the biggest?
The counter to that argument is SkyWest is on that list, and they are ACMI.
Yeah.
Right?
They're bigger.
CPA, bigger. I get it. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
And the thing is, they have analyst coverage. We don't. Right. So you actually have to read our report versus taking the analyst report, which is
that sounds terrible. ChatGPT.
I agree. It's terrible. They try and make our press releases super simple.
Very cool. Yeah. Ryan, thank you for spending the time with us today. Truly appreciate it.
Thanks.
Good morning, Courtney. Always good to be on with you, even during your grumpy days.
Especially during my grumpy days.
Yeah. Turn off, out of office. I'll be away forever. I will let you know when I'm back.
I'm going to turn on the I'm in office but don't care message. Hey, I'm here in the office. I really don't want to read your email.
I'm choosing not to respond to emails today.